Thanks to Kettle and Fire for sponsoring today's video. So many of us avoid healthy eating because we feel like we don't have the time to put into it. This week, I'm going to share with you some of my favorite recipes I've been making lately that you can have done in 20 to 25 minutes. And I'm starting with breakfast. So this morning I ran out to the garden and I'm grabbing some arugula to make a little breakfast salad. It's full of protein, full of bitter greens, and so good for you and really fresh, especially this time of year. This week, I'm going to share with you some new ideas I have for meals that take 25 minutes or less that you can go to and make sure that you're feeding yourself or your family as best you can. I'm grabbing a couple eggs and getting them into some cold water, and I'm going to heat those up and just do a nice medium to hard boiled egg. And while that's happening, I put some frozen chicken sausage into the oven and we'll just let those air fry for a couple minutes. So I've got 2 proteins going into this breakfast salad, and then I rinsed my arugula. You could also use spinach or any kind of green that you like. If you like broccoli or you prefer that kind of green, then add that and it's still going to be a delicious breakfast bowl. So I'm going to add that arugula in, and then we're going to top it with olive oil. You could do a little red wine vinegar. And once those eggs are cooked, just run them under an ice bath or under cold water, and you can keep those stored in the fridge all week long. So you could really skip this step and have that ready to go in your fridge. You could even have the chicken sausage ready to go in your fridge. And then I drizzle my greens with a little fresh olive oil, some red wine vinegar, salt, and then I also love a pinch of red pepper flake just for a little heat. And I toss that all together, and then I top it with that warm breakfast sausage and the soft-boiled eggs. And this is just such a great way to get in all the most important things right at breakfast. I love topping this with a little bit of fresh feta, but you could also use fresh Parmesan on it just to add a nice little cheesy bite. So if you're looking for a healthier breakfast idea, this is a great one to have all spring long. I love being able to sneak in bitter greens, but if you don't like arugula, you can definitely substitute that for spinach. You can do baby spinach. Either way, this little combo is delicious and really healthy and super fast too. You can have this done in no time. All right, tonight I really don't have that much time to get something on the table, but I want to make it something good, and I have some chicken, some thin sliced chicken breast in my fridge that I need to use up before I have to put it in the freezer. So I'm gonna go ahead and use it tonight, and I think what I'm gonna do is get some brown rice pasta going to have on the side. And then while that's happening, I'm gonna make this really delicious chicken just in a cast iron skillet. I have it preheating right now, and I'm gonna cook that chicken and make a really quick pan sauce out of it with a little bit of heavy cream. I've got some bone broth, and then I'm also gonna grab a couple lemons and put some lemon in it and make like a creamy lemon sauce to go over this chicken and pasta. And I think it's gonna be really good. I always have some Kettle and Fire bone broth in my pantry. I use it all the time in my cooking because it's full of nutrients, collagen, protein, amino acids, vitamins, and minerals. And so I always try to include it in my cooking as a cooking liquid. Bone broth is so much better for you than other just regular broths because they're able to slow cook these bones down and extract all of those important nutrients out of the bones. But it's important to source a high quality bone broth. So to do that, you need to look at things like simmer time, temperature, are they using real bones or bone powders? Sourcing standards like, is it organic, free range chickens? Are they grass-fed cows? And that is why I always stick with Kettle and Fire, because they use grass-fed beef and they use organic free range chicken, and they're slow simmered with organic ingredients. It's a great thing to add to rice or to pastas or even sauces. It also has 19 grams of protein per serving, so it's an amazing way to sneak in protein. So bone broth has a unique nutritional makeup that is beneficial in so many ways. If you want to try Kettle and Fire's bone broth for yourself, you can go to kettleandfire.com, enter code HealthyElizabeth at checkout, and it's going to give you 20% off your order. Thanks so much to Kettle and Fire for sponsoring today's video. So I started by grating up some Parmesan cheese to coat our chicken in. So I'm seasoning that Parmesan just like you would breadcrumbs with some salt, some pepper, and a little bit of garlic powder. So it has lots of flavor, but without the flour, because you really don't need it here. We just want a light golden crust, and the cheese, once it's kind of cooked and browned in the pan, it will give us a beautiful brown coating. So I pat my chicken dry with a paper towel. That way I can get all the Parmesan to really stick to it. And so I just lightly dust it. You don't need a big thick coating, just a light one to give it a little bit of crustiness when it hits that hot pan. So once my pan is preheated to medium heat, I add in that avocado oil and get my chicken cooking. And I like to do it a little bit lower of a temp. That way I can let it cook and make sure that it's fully cooked so I don't have to transfer it into an oven. But if you accidentally cook it on too high of heat and you need to take them out and put them in the oven to cook through, you can do it that way too. It's just one more step. So I tried to do it this way. That's why I like using the thinly sliced chicken breast instead. And then while those are cooking, I have my pasta boiling so that the chicken and the pasta are done pretty much at the same time. And I think this is something that is really useful, especially if you're learning how to cook, is timing things right so that everything is done at the same time and you're not waiting around for it. So while both those things are going, I'm going ahead and measuring out my bone broth and my heavy cream that I'm going to use to make this really easy pan sauce. And then once I let that come together, I'll just add in some fresh lemon and garlic, and it just makes a delicious creamy sauce that can go not only on our chicken, but all in our pasta. And it works out to be almost like a lighter version of Alfredo, because even though I'm still using heavy cream, I'm cutting that with the bone broth, and then I'm not adding in Parmesan, I'm adding in lemon juice. So it's a little bit lighter and a little bit brighter, but we have that light coating of Parmesan on the chicken, so it's just a delicious meal. So once my chicken's done, I pull that out and I'll sprinkle in a little bit of flour into the drippings that were in my pan. And then if I need more, I'll add in some more avocado oil, or you could add in butter, whichever you prefer. And then I just crushed 2 whole garlic cloves and threw them in there too. And I should have done that before I made the roux, but I forgot. So that's okay. We'll just let those cook away. But once my roux comes together and I cook off that flour taste for a minute or two, I'll pour in that bone broth and let it start to thicken. And as soon as you see it start to thicken, that's when you can drizzle in that cream and whisk until it comes into a beautiful creamy pan sauce. We'll just let that cook for 2 or 3 minutes until it thickens up into a desired consistency to coat our pasta. I sprinkled in a little extra pepper. You could also add in a pinch of nutmeg. And then I went out to the garden and grabbed some fresh spinach, and I'm going to let that wilt really quickly in that cream sauce. And this is a great way to sneak in any sort of green into your dinner. It could be frozen broccoli or it could be peas. You can just add that quickly into your sauce. Add a little bit of butter just to make sure it's nice and delicious on that pasta, and then pour in the lemon juice, and this sauce is ready to go. So I'll return my brown rice noodles into the pan and top it with all that beautiful Parmesan chicken. I'll have the recipe for you at healthyelizabeth.com. If you're looking for a family favorite recipe you can feed your family any night of the week, this is definitely it. This style of dinner just pleases everyone. And I drizzle the pan juices right over the top and serve straight out of the skillet. Okay, dinner tonight, I've got to get going quickly because I already have little ones that are coming to me telling me they're hungry and need a snack. So I need to get this dinner done, even though it is early still. We eat an early dinner, but I like to make sure that everything's cooked by the time my kids get really ravenous. So we're gonna do a quick 20-ish minute meal here. I have some of these baby potatoes. I buy the ones that are like the multicolor, so you get some different health benefits hopefully because there's different colors. But you can also get the ones that are just plain and gold. They're so good and creamy. So all I'm gonna do is cut these in half, and then I'm gonna put them in a big pot here and cover them with water about an inch or so. Put those on the stove to boil, and then while those are boiling, I have some fish that I picked up at the farmer's market. So I've got some nice local fish. I think I got cod. And I'm gonna cook that in the skillet, just pan sear it up with some fresh lemon juice, lots of good butter, and have a little bit of pan fried fish along with this potato salad I'm making. So I'll just make a dressing for it. And it's gonna be more like a vinegar-based potato salad. So it's gonna be nice, light, and healthy. I'm gonna grab some herbs from the garden too and just make a nice zingy, refreshing potato salad to go on the side of the fish. So you can get this meal done in about 25 minutes. You just need to do it in the right order. So I start by covering those potatoes with water and getting those boiling on my stove. And while those boil, I'll go ahead and put together the quick little vinaigrette that will go on the warm potatoes. So I'm using some olive oil, lemon juice, and zest. And then I crush in some garlic, a little bit of Dijon mustard, or actually stone ground mustard, I think is what I ended up using today. And then some salt and some pepper. And then I'll add in that fresh dill from the garden, and you can do spring onions too. I always have those on hand this time of year, so I've been putting them in just about everything I can, and it's just so tasty and bright, and I love all the zest of the lemon, and the bite from that vinegar is so good on potatoes. I think I'm starting to love a vinegar-based potato salad even more than the typical mayo potato salad. So you can either crush your garlic or mince it up really finely. You could even grate it on a microplane, but just make sure it gets in that vinegar so it can start to kind of soften, and then we'll add in those fresh herbs. Now I chopped up some green onion, and I grabbed a little bit of fresh dill too, because I love dill and potatoes together. So I'm just gonna take a little bit of this and chop it up. But if you only have one or the other, you can definitely just use one or the other. That's totally fine. But if you have both, it's a delicious combination. We'll toss our warm potatoes into the dressing so they can really absorb all of that vinaigrette. And then after it starts to cool a little bit and chill, then I'll throw in the fresh green onions and dill, and we have potato salad. All right, so now I have some beautiful cod fillets, and I'm just gonna season them up really simply with a little bit of pepper and some garlic powder and salt, and then I'm gonna make a special sauce to go on it, just a quick pan sauce that we can serve right on top of it. And it comes together so quickly, and it's so fresh, and it complements the fish nicely, and once you have it this way, you'll just be amazed at how simple it is to make something taste so delicious, especially when it comes to fish that can sometimes be a little bit bland. But if you just add a really quick pan sauce to it, you'll be amazed at just how far that goes. So season this up on both sides, and then I'm gonna get it into a really nice and hot skillet and get a nice crusty coating on the outside. Now I'll turn these beautiful fillets over and Do the other side to make sure every little bit has that good seasoning on it and we're not gonna have any bland bites of fish. That way, if you have somebody in your house that thinks fish is just a little too fishy, adding some good seasonings and sauces to fish can totally win people over. Now I'll get these into a skillet with a nice drizzle of avocado oil. You can use butter, you can use olive oil. You just wanna make sure you have enough in there so it doesn't stick. And use a nice non-stick pan, either cast iron, titanium. And I'm cooking quite a bit of fish, so I'm gonna do this in 2 batches, but that just depends on how much fish you're gonna be cooking. If you are doing half this amount, you'll only need 1 round. Okay, that oil's nice and heated up, so I'm gonna go ahead and place my fish in. Once your oil's nice and hot, I put the fillets in and I'll just cook them for 3 or 4 minutes on the first side. And then once the edges are nice and opaque, I'll gently flip it over. Cod is kind of tricky for me to cook in a pan. I do better with tilapia, but I love how flaky cod is, and you can cook it so quickly in a skillet. Just flip it over and do 3 or 4 minutes again on the other side, and then transfer it to a plate and let it cool, and then we'll make the pan sauce. Right when you hear that fish starting to make that sound, you hear really strong sizzles and the oil starts to turn just a little bit brown. That's when that crust is forming, so just let it cook. Don't try to tug at it and pull it up from the pan. It'll release when it's done, once that coating and crust has formed. So I'm gonna leave it and then we'll ever so gently turn it over. Once the fish is done, I'll remove it from the skillet and reduce the heat to medium-low, and I'll add in some butter and just let it melt and kind of give it a whirl. It'll start to turn into brown butter, and then I just add in a squeeze of lemon juice and a little extra garlic powder, and I'll cook it for a minute or 2 and it'll slightly start to thicken, and then we'll just drizzle this right over the top of the fish. It makes it so moist and just delicious and full of flavor, and I love how the potato salad with the vinegar just cuts right through the butteriness of all the fish. There's something about muffins that just makes our mornings that much better, whether it's on the weekend or sometimes if it's a Monday and we need something to just kind of get us going for the week. I reach for this particular muffin recipe. They're sourdough discard, which means you can take your unfed starter that maybe you forgot to feed over a busy weekend and put it to good use in some delicious breakfast muffins. Now, normally I make these with blueberries, but you can use almost any kind of fruit in these. So I'm using strawberries because this time of year we've been waiting for those really early strawberries. They're here, they're sweet and ripe. We see them every weekend at the farmer's market, and they're so good and they need to be used quickly, and sometimes they're a little too ripe. If I'm not making a jam or we're putting it over some yogurt, then I love taking some fresh strawberries and cutting them up and putting them into these muffins. There's something special about the fresh fruit as opposed to the frozen fruit. I don't know if it's just the way that it bakes up in the batter, but I feel like it just gives you this ripe, kind of soft, jammy-like bite that you just can't get from frozen. So I love reaching for strawberries whenever they're in season and making these muffins because they almost remind me of something like strawberries and cream, but in a muffin form. And when I go to reach for them in the morning with a cup of coffee or hand it to my little kids, there is just something about them that makes the day so much greater. So all I do is take that sourdough discard, and I'm using some of my kamut flour, but you can use regular, just all-purpose flour, and I sweeten it up, add in some salt and baking powder, a couple eggs, and then I'll switch it up depending on what ingredients I have. So sometimes it's avocado oil, sometimes it's half butter, half avocado oil, a splash of whole milk, a little bit of whole Greek yogurt, or I'll swap it for sour cream. Or like today, I swapped the regular whole milk for buttermilk because I had some in the fridge that needed to be used up. But every time I make these muffins, they turn out fantastic, whether I swap them out for one ingredient or the other. So you really can play around and use what you have in your fridge. I make them regular size muffins, or today I'm making them mini muffins, and they are just so fun to put in these little wrappers and have like a little package you can hold. And I sprinkle them with a little dusting of raw sugar just for some crunch, and there is nothing that beats a fresh homemade in season strawberry muffin. If I'm making mini muffins like today, I'll preheat my oven to 350 and cook them for about 14 minutes, maybe a little bit less. And if I'm making regular muffins, I usually cook them for around 20 to 22 minutes, depending on which fruit I'm using. Thanks so much for joining me in the kitchen.